do you like that for a stewardship sermon idea? It's no lie. We're giving away $2,000 at the end of service, so don't leave. You got to listen to the whole stewardship sermon before you leave. The title of our message today is continuing our series, A Righteous Mess, the Bad Steward. I don't know if you've heard a sermon title that way either. We usually focus on the good steward, right? But we're focusing on the righteous mess that each one of us are in this life and how God relates to us. So today we're going to take a look at the bad steward. So I was up on a wall, and we were framing out the second story, second floor of the building. Well, we were getting ready to frame out the second floor of the building, but a buddy of mine and I, we were up there working, and we decided to have a competition. See, we had these air-powered nail guns, and we decided to see who could shoot the furthest and aim the best with the nail gun, right? Now, they do have safeties on them so that you can't hurt yourself too badly is the idea. But we figured out if you actually pull back the little lever on the end, see, normally you press down that lever on the end, and once that's pressed down, then you can pull the trigger and fire the nail into the board. Well, we figured out if you stick your hand up there and pull that lever back yourself, then you could just, fire at will. And so we were standing up there on the edge, seeing how far we could shoot these nails out across the road into the field on the other side. And I don't recommend doing that. It's irresponsible and bad. But we're talking about a righteous mess, so there you go. Anyway, so we were up there doing that, and I don't even remember who won, but it was fun, and I like to tell a story. So anyway, so then we decide finally, well, our boss is going to be there pretty soon, so we better get to work and actually show some progress for the nails we just wasted out of his bank account. And so we started nailing the rim band outside the edge of the second floor. You got the roof there, the 2x4s or 2x6s that go around the edge of the bottom story, and then you got to nail a rim band to nail the joists that go across to put your next floor on. And so we're nailing the rim band around the outside, and it's a board about this thick that sits on the outside of a 2x4 like this. And so you're standing there trying to stand on the edge of this 2x4, reaching around trying to nail the rim band down in. And so we're going along nailing, and I was, you got to push in, and you notice which direction the pretend gun I have in my hand is pointing, right? And so you're out there and you're leaning over, standing on this narrow wall and trying to nail in that rim band at an angle. And as the gun kicked back, it caught the edge of the rim band, and I still had the trigger pulled. I hadn't released it, and it released that safety on the end, and I felt a thud in my calf. And I looked down, and so the nail was normally about yay long, and there's about this much of it sticking out of my leg. I thought, oh no, now I'm in trouble, right? Standing up here on this narrow wall, and I got a nail stuck in my leg, and the crazy thing is it didn't hurt. It just, I looked down, and there it was. I don't know if it was shock or if it just caught a part of my leg that had no nerves in it or anything. And so I'm looking down there, and all of a sudden a trickle of blood starts to come out, and I'm thinking I better get down off this wall before I fall off this wall and really get hurt. So I climb down and go down in the basement, and my buddy comes down, and there's water already stubbed in. And so he turns on the water, and he starts rinsing the leg, and he says, well, here, and he yanks the nail out. I don't know if that's the right thing to do or not, but he yanks it out and then rinses the leg off. And my boss has arrived by this moment in time, and he's like, okay, we need to get you in. So he takes me and hauls me into an urgent care clinic, and they give me a tetanus shot. My leg never hurt at all. I was just fine, but I couldn't use my arm for a week after the tetanus shot. So anyway, long and short of it is, what was the point of that story? There was a point. There was somewhere I was going with it. Long story, we're all a righteous mess, right? We all do things. Here's the point. I remember now. The nail gun, was it good or bad? Was the nail gun good or bad? Good? Bad? It's neither, right? Nail gun is not good. It's not bad. It's a tool to be used. Now, was the person using it good or bad? Well, we were using it irresponsibly, right? We were doing crazy stuff with it, and then made a mistake as I was nailing that rim band in, right? What caused the harm? It wasn't the nail gun. It was the faulty mess of a user, right? It was my mistake that caused the problem. And when we come to today's subject, this is incredibly important to keep in mind. When it comes to money, too often in the church, we look at money as a negative thing, as a bad thing, and we heap all sorts of negative ideas and connotations around it. And immediately, if someone's got a lot of money, right, there's got to be something shady and suspicious going on there. And so oftentimes in church culture, we have this idea that money is bad. But is money good or bad? It's neither, right? It's like a nail gun. It is a tool to be used. It's a tool to be used. It's not good or bad. There's nothing inherent within it that is righteous or unrighteous. It is simply a tool to be used. Use it wrong and you can shoot yourself in the leg, right? Use it wrongly and you can make a mess out of your life. But used rightly, it's an incredible, incredible tool, an incredible blessing. Come with me this morning to our story about the bad steward. Luke chapter 16. Luke chapter 16, Jesus is talking here. He says, he also said to the disciples, there was a rich man who had a steward, and charges were brought to him that this man was wasting his goods. So the rich man puts his riches in the steward's command. Today we'd call it an accountant, right? You got your accountant managing your funds, or your investment manager and managing your investments. And so the steward, the investment manager, is investing things, and he decides, hey, the rich guy is not looking over my shoulder. I can use a little bit of this for myself, right? I can use this to get ahead in life. I can gain an advantage here, and I can put this money of the rich guy to use for me. After all, he's rich. He doesn't need it all, right? And so he starts mismanaging his master's goods. So the master calls him in to have a conversation with him and says to him, what is this that I hear about you? Turn in the account of your stewardship, for you can no longer be steward. And he said to himself, what shall I do since my master is taking the stewardship away from me? I am not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I can't go out and do manual labor. I don't want to go to work for a living, right? And I don't want to go beg either. That would shame. Right? Two things: lack of work ethic, and number two, what? Fear to ask for help, right? Ashamed to ask for help. Doesn't want to ask for charity, right? So this guy's got multiple issues. If you were to stop and analyze this guy, what three major problems has the Bible already identified with him? First of all, in regards to stewardship, what's he doing? At the very least, he's careless or not careful. Most likely, he's a thief, right? He's embezzling funds from the rich guy and things. So strike number one. Strike number two, he says, I can't go and get a real job. He's what? Lazy. And strike number three, he is ashamed to ask for help. Pride has interfered in his life. So we'd say 3 strikes and you're what? 3 strikes and you're out. But there's something fascinating about this story that is kind of cool about our God. See, this is actually a real story that really happened. This was there was a publican in those days that lived there in the community, and he was managing a publican. I forget the exact term that was used, but he was managing a rich person's money, and he squandered it. This story Jesus tells is a common story of a real event that happened in his days, and the Pharisees would use this as a way to condemn those who were involved like this, right? They were all about money, and so in their religious experience, they would be foremost in pulling this guy and saying he's a thief, he's lazy, and he's proud. And yet this story is told in a context that when you understand the context, I think it has a powerful message for us. If you go back to chapter 15, the very chapter right before Jesus tells this story, it says, now the tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to who? To Jesus. And Jesus was sitting down with them and doing what with them? Eating with them. Socializing with them. He was being a part of their community. These very individuals who were ostracized and condemned by the priests and rulers, Jesus was sitting with, eating with them, hanging out with them, right? These people that were kind of outcasts and shoved off from society, saying, man, you shouldn't be around those people. They're the worst of the worst, right? They're evil. They're at the very least unclean, not allowed to come to church, not allowed to be a part of the religious services, right? The priests and rulers, well, they really wanted the money, right? It was competition for the pie that was there, the pie to split up the money. And so anyway, they shoved these guys aside, and yet Jesus drew close to them. And now he comes and he's talking and engaging with the priests and rulers. They're coming in there, they're getting on Jesus now. Why do you and your disciples hang out with tax collectors and publicans? And Jesus tells this story about the bad steward. Bible doesn't tell us this, but it's likely that this was one of the guys Jesus was hanging out with. And now he's telling his story to everyone there. Kind of puts the story in a little different light, doesn't it? Kind of changes the context a little bit. This is not a story of condemnation. This is not Jesus, calling this guy out and painting a picture of how bad and awful he is and how you shouldn't be like this guy. No, this is a message of grace. This is a message of God saying, hey, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how bad people think you are. It doesn't matter how much you've messed up. It doesn't matter how much a mess you've made of your life. You may have embezzled. You may have done all these things. You may be lazy. You may be worthless. Right? All these things. And yet I will engage with you. I will sit with you. I will eat with you. I will draw close to you because that's the kind of God I am. And he called and said to him, give an account. Give an account of your stewardship, for you can no longer be a steward. So the steward said, what do I do, right? What do I do? I'm lazy, I'm proud, and I don't know what to do. So here's what I'm going to do. Since my master is taking the stewardship from me, I'm going to go out and I'm going to make friends of all those debtors to my master. And so he goes to one and says, hey, how much wheat do you owe? How much wheat do you owe my master? And he says, 100 measures. Excuse me, I missed one here. Oil, sorry. How much do you owe my master? He said, 100 measures of oil. He said to him, take your bill, sit down, and write 50. You owe 100 measures of oil. He says, I'm cutting your bill in half. How do you feel about that guy right now? Pretty good, right? Someone just says, hey, you got this debt out there. I'm just going to cut it in half. You don't got to call a debt consolidation society. You don't got to apply for a loan. You don't have to go through one of these shady institutions. I'm just going to cut it in half. Shady institutions coming to you saying, I'll just forgive it, right? Cut it in half. He goes to the next guy. So how much do you owe? And he says, well, I owe 100 measures of wheat. He said to him, take your bill and write 80. Now, I don't know why 50 on one, 80 on the other. I may start getting upset if I'm the guy with the wheat. But he says, take and write 80. You get a 20% discount on your bill. He's making them accomplices, right? I mean, he didn't have his master's authority to do this. They owed him that money, and he comes along and he cuts their bill in half. Now they're all accomplices with him, right? And so when he gets kicked out, he can go to them and say, hey, you owe me. You owe me because I cut your bill. I cut what you owed. Now, this is the part of the story that always kind of messed with me. I never could quite figure it out why the master responded in this way. And it says, then the master commended the dishonest steward for his shrewdness. The rich guy comes and he commends the steward for his shrewdness. If I'm the rich guy, I'm not commending anybody, right? I'm getting a lawyer to see if I can get my money back. And yet he comes and he commends the guy. It turns everything on its head. You see, the priests and rulers would have had my mindset. The priests and rulers would be like, man, we're going to go and we're going to take back every single last cent that is owed us, and then we're going to tack on some pain and suffering on top of that, right? We're going to make sure that they know and that they never do this again. And Jesus changes this whole societal concept on its head, and he says, the master commends him for being wise. Now, I'm not going to get into all the morality of this. My guess is his intentions were pretty selfish to begin with, right? After all, he's stealing from the rich guy, and now he's trying to save his own hide on the end of the story. But I think there's something very important here. And that is at the heart and the center of this story are two things. One is Jesus is sitting with the guy who's condemned, right? Jesus is sitting with the bad guy in the story, eating with him, hanging out with him. And now he spins things into a positive message. He takes and turns the whole thing around and makes it a positive message, commending him for focusing outwards. See, his whole life had been lived for himself up to this point. And all of a sudden, even though it was likely from selfish reasons, now he is reaching out and doing something good for someone else. Are you with me this morning? Regardless of his motives, regardless of how things are going, there's a change that takes place in this guy's attitude. There's a change that takes place in the way he relates to things, and now he is focused outward. He's looking outward to bless someone else, even if he has ulterior motives. See, when it comes to money, when it comes to the mess we often make out of our lives, It's about the direction of our focus, first and foremost. See, Jesus commends this guy here, and he uses this story to teach a very important point. And that is, it's what you do for others that really matters. It's what you do for others that really matters in life. When it comes to money in our society, there's a lot of anxiety. Have you ever noticed that? A lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. As you look at the market, right? The housing market was exploding and going crazy for a while, and I don't know, anybody else a little anxious about it may crash, right? Memories of 2008 coming back around. The economy may go south, and what's going to happen, and there's this anxiety that starts taking place. There's an interesting phenomenon that happens. We live in one of the most anxious societies here in North America that exist on planet Earth. Right? We are more medicated for anxiety. We have more health issues because of anxiety. We have all these anxieties going on, and yet we live in a pretty stable environment compared to most places on Earth. Why is it that we have higher rates of anxiety than places that have so much less than us? And if we do make a mess and we get fired, like this guy's about to, you don't even have to go make friends. The government will take care of you, right? There's a safety net in place if you totally make a mess of your financial life. And yet we live in one of the most anxious, stressed out societies on earth. And I propose to you it's because of this very subject. There's actually data that backs this up, that the reason we are so anxious is we are too busy looking inward. How is this going to impact my life? How am I going to take care of myself? What's going to happen to this investment that I've built up so much, right? And we're worried and we're anxious because we're focused inward. And yet the moment this steward turns and focuses outwards, all of a sudden his whole life is transformed and changed. Now he's got some security, right? Now the anxiety level just starts coming down, and all of a sudden he gets a commendation from his boss who was condemning him and firing him before. I mean, he's still getting fired, right? But he gets a comment. All of a sudden everything begins to change, and there's a radical transformation in the story when the focus goes from being inwards to being focused outwards on blessing and benefiting others. Jesus says, I tell you, let's back up to verse 8. The master commended the dishonest steward for his shrewdness. For the sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light. It seems kind of a hit at us, doesn't it? Like Jesus says, people in the world are smarter than you guys. Not smarter, shrewder, right? Looking out for their own self-interest, they make better choices and better decisions than sometimes my own people do. This is all in a context. It's all in the context of turning outwards and investing in others and making friends of others. They do it for selfish reasons. Jesus says, I want you to do it for the right reasons. The children of this age are shrewder than the sons of light. I tell you, verse 9, notice that here's kind of the punchline. I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of unrighteous mammon, so that when it fails, when money fails, that they may receive you into eternal habitations. Do you catch that switch in the story? This earth, sons of men making friends with money. And Jesus says, I want you to do the same thing. I want you to make friends now, so that when it fails, when the money fails, they may receive you into eternal habitations. Do you catch that switch in focus? Instead of focusing on the here and the now, all of a sudden he turns and he focuses on the eternal. Somehow there's a direct connection between lowering anxiety and stress and looking outwards and investing in the lives of each other, of others, and eternity. Being focused on the eternal means being focused outward in the here and now. You know, there's that old saying, you're so heavenly minded, you're no earthly good. Jesus says that's not true. That's not true at all. If you are invested in the lives of others, if you're invested in helping others, if you're invested in lifting up others, you have eternal goals in mind. Eternity is the end result. It's where you're headed. It's where you're going. See, eternity and helping others, eternity and outward focus go hand in hand. It's what Jesus is all about. Somehow, got on the wrong page. He who is faithful in very little is faithful also in much, and he who is dishonest in very little is dishonest in much. If then you have not been faithful with unrighteous money, who will entrust you to the true riches? He's taking and he's speaking to the priests and rulers. He's speaking to the religious folks of his day who are so interested in condemning everyone around them and consolidating their own power and their own wealth that they stopped caring for those around them. Jesus says true riches are found in relationships. True riches are found in connections. True riches are found in blessing others and building relationships in that context, which will lead to eternal riches because those friendships, those relationships, that community, those connections will last forever. No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. You can't serve God and money. So Jesus isn't saying money's bad. Keep that clear in your mind here. Jesus isn't saying money's bad. He's saying there's a hierarchy. You serve God, and money serves you. God, us, money. Money is a blessing when used to serve God, to bless those around us, to take care of our families, to take care of our communities, to bless those in need. When used to invest in the lives of others, when kept in that hierarchy. But when money becomes our master, all of a sudden the anxiety level goes up. All of a sudden the stress level goes up. Because now our dependency is on riches or money or lack of riches. It doesn't matter what your financial status is, rather than being on God. And the anxiety level goes through the roof. So Jesus comes along and he tells us the story of the bad steward is a story of transformation. It's not a story of how to manage your money. It's a story about where your focus is. Is it inward or is it outward on blessing others? The Pharisees, who were lovers of money, heard all this and they scoffed at him. Pharisees heard this and they started scoffing. They're like, you're ridiculous, right? You are crazy. But he responded to them, you are those who justify yourselves before men. But God knows your hearts, for what is exalted among men is an abomination in the sight of God. I want to make a quick switch here now. There's another story that ties together with this one. Another story of stewards and a wealthy landowner, right, who heads out on a journey. When he heads out, he commits his resources to his stewards, his financial managers. He says, I'm going to give you 5 talents, and I'm going to give you 2 talents, and I'm going to give you 1 talent. What's the guy with 5 talents go and do? The guy with 5 talents, he goes and does what? He invests it, right? Finds some way. The Bible doesn't tell us how. He just goes and invests it. And he multiplies it, right? Doubles it to 10 talents. The guy who was given 2 talents, what does he do? He goes and does the same thing. He doubles his investment. He goes out and takes a risk. Now, if you're going to double your investment, that's probably a pretty risky endeavor you're involved in. I don't know what endeavor it is, but most investments don't pay a 100% return, right, on your investment. But that's what's going on here. And so the third guy comes along and he's got 1, right? And what does he do with it? He buries it in the ground. But the point of the story is not the doubling or the burying. The point of the story is, why does he bury it? Why does he bury the talent? When the master comes and asks for accounting, he says, I knew you were a what? A hard master. I knew you were a hard master, and therefore I was afraid. I knew you were a hard master, and therefore I was afraid. And I just have to wonder how many people live with that kind of a relationship with God in heaven. I knew you were a hard master. I knew if I went out and invested and tried to double it and I lost it all, man, you'd be coming for me, right? You'd be coming with an accounting, with a day of reckoning. Apparently he hadn't read the story of the other one where Jesus sits down with the guy who blew a bunch of money, right? Eats with him and embraces him and commends him. He says, I knew you were a hard master. When we have in our minds the concept, and it may not be at the front of our mind, but that God is a hard taskmaster, and if we go out and if we blow it, if we make a mess, if we make a mess with his money, right? Man, we're in for it. He's going to hold an accounting, and on the day of judgment, you better have done something with it, or if you lost it, if you had a decrease in your investments, so I'm just going to go bury it. I'm just going to hang on to the one thing I have and make sure I give it back when he comes, right? That's this guy's attitude. That's his mentality. And Jesus is like, no, that's not the way I work. That's not the way it's supposed to be. When you enter into partnership with me, you are set free. When you enter into business relationship with God, you are set free to take risks and to take risks to advance his cause and to multiply the talents, the money that he's given you, the gifts he's given you, the skills he's given you, whatever it is. It says take a risk. Go out and multiply it. Go out and multiply it. So today, I'm not going to call for an offering at the end of our stewardship sermon. Instead, we're going to give you $2,000 to close off this service. We're going to do something a little different. Now, I wish I could take credit for this, but I can't. I heard about this from our conference president. He did this up at his church in the Valley up there in Canada. And they took and they gave away money at their church at the end of a church service. They said, here's what we want you to do. This is God's money we're giving to you. We got $100 bills up here. Matthew's just going to start. No. We'll get to it in a minute. We got $100 bills up here, and here's what we're going to do. He said, so they started giving out $100 bills. We want you to take this $100, and we want you to use it and invest it. Find some way to multiply it to do good in this world, to do good for someone else. So twofold things that are really called to do in this. First of all, threefold, actually. Recognize this is God's money that he is entrusting to you. All right? Secondly, find a way to multiply it. Thirdly, find a good cause to invest it in. And in 90 days, last sermon of the year, December, whatever date it is, the last sermon in December, we're going to come back together and we're going to tell stories of what's going on. Now it may not be that you have it accomplished by then, right? I've had several come to me and say, hey, we'd like to do a dental clinic where we provide health care to our community, right? And so we need to raise some money for that. Well, if you want to raise money for doing a dental clinic here in our community and help use this money for that, hey, great, we could do that, right? Others have said, we'd like to do a mission trip, right? We'd like to invest in a mission trip, giving to those who are extremely less fortunate than we are, right? Whatever it is that God lays on your heart. There was actually a young adult group in the church that they did this in, and there was a young girl in their community who was having major health issues, and the family couldn't afford the medical care. So they said, hey, you know what? We're going to take this money that we've received, and we're going to invest it, and we're going to help pay for her medical bills. Now, $100, if you know about medical bills at all, they don't go together. So instead of going and seeing how they could pay down the bill with the $100, they bought a website and advertising. They took the $100 and bought a website and advertising. And then on the website, they started advertising. They were going to have a 24-hour soccer tournament. They were going to play soccer for 24 hours nonstop. And they were going to get sponsors to sponsor the players, right? For each one of those hours that they played, they got sponsors. And so they advertised it, went out to the community. People started signing up. Well, hey, I'll sponsor you. It's for a good cause. I want to sponsor you. So that $100, anybody hear the story at camp meeting? That $100 was turned into $21,000. $21,000 by the end of 90 days. Because they held one soccer tournament. I was miserable. It was cold. It was wet. They were out there playing in the mud and rain. People came out to watch, though. Anyway, $21,000, $120,000. I'd say that's a pretty good return on your investment, right? The church was $90,000 short of meeting their budget for the year when Pastor David went and asked them for the money to invest in this project. They said, okay, we're short. We don't know what we're going to do. But they took $3,000 is what they did. They took $3,000. By the end of 90 days, it had multiplied and turned into $125,000. to 125. And by the end of the year, the church was in the black. They met budget. God pours out abundant blessings. Now, what's he going to do in the next 90 days here in our church community? I don't know. But I can't wait to get to the end of December and to start telling stories and hearing stories about what God is doing among us. So we're going to